Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Connected Community Scrutiny Committee being held on Tuesday the 9th of September 2025. For those present in the meeting room, if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and make your way to the fire assembly point in the car park. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on Herefordshire Council website, and the Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record public meetings, providing it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If there are any members of the public present who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please raise your hand now so that any such person filming or photographing may be made aware. For participants in the room, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to contribute. When invited to speak, please press the button on the right of the microphone unit and speak directly towards the microphone. Please remember to turn your microphone off once you have finished speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones, laptops and other devices are turned to silent. For participants in attendance remotely, can I request that you use the raise hand feature within the system if you wish to contribute and to introduce yourself when called upon to do so. Please note that only committee members present in the meeting room may vote. Right, there have been no apologies for absence received, that's my understanding. And there are no substitutes present. Do any members wish to declare any interest in any of the agenda items? No. The minutes document of the meeting held on the 8th of July 2025 is included in the agenda at pages 13 to 18. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Are you all content that I sign the minutes as a true and accurate record? Yep. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I will do so. Questions from members of the public. The committee has received one question from a member of the public, and a response to the question has been published in Supplement 1 to the agenda. The questioner has had the opportunity to submit a written supplementary question or to join the meeting to ask their supplementary question. Supplementary questions are to be no more than 1 minute in length and must include a question. Can I ask the clerk to confirm if a supplementary question is to be asked?
Yes, Chair. One written supplementary question has been received from Mr. Milne. I will now display and read out the written question in a moment. Okay. Right. Thank you for the response. However, I didn't ask about LC-WIP's objectives, but about its implementation. The DFT's guidance on plan preparation for local authorities, April 2017, sets out the pathway to the development of integrated networks by prioritising and programming infrastructure improvements using the tools for route selection and propensity to walk and cycle, which have since been augmented by the LTN 120 design standard. What, therefore, are the questions you will put to lead Herefordshire to get an LC-WIP where the interventions needed to meet the objectives are clearly defined, ordered and credible, so that they can be funded and implemented swiftly and efficiently?
Thank you for your supplementary question, Mr. Milne. Having considered this, and in light of the discussions that we recently had at our Lines of Inquiry meeting, I'm confident that the area you wish to explore will come under scrutiny this afternoon, and hopefully over the course of the meeting you'll feel that it has been sufficiently answered. Thank you. No questions have been received from councillors on this occasion, which leads us on to item 7, the local walking and cycling infrastructure plan scrutiny report, which is on pages 19 to 404 of your papers today. And I'm pleased we have Fionn Horton here, Transport Planning Services Manager, as well as Gemma Dando online. And I'm going to start by asking Fionn to introduce the LC-WIP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Chair, for giving us the opportunity to come and talk to the committee today about the LC-WIP, the Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan for Herefordshire Council. The plan sets out our infrastructure objectives for walking and cycling throughout the whole county. We wanted to make sure that it was applicable to each area, so the plans are unique to the market towns or the city where they are being designed within. The reason we have an LC-WIP is government want us to have an LC-WIP. It's to show that we are supportive and prioritising walking and cycling, as it is a a well-used mode of transport that has a lot of community benefits, such as increasing health, both physical and mental, and also it has a good eco-social balance to it. The plan will be used to create a priority list of projects that we as officers progress for design and delivery over the coming years, and also allows us to work with external partners such as developers to make sure that the work that they're doing in the county reflects what the council want from the walking and cycling infrastructure. It also helps us to unlock national funding, so having an LC whip allows us to be a higher rated council, and that gives us opportunity for more grants, and also we're much more likely to receive the grants we apply for because the decisions we're making are based on a plan and not just an assumption, so it gives good credibility to the work that we're doing. I've shared as part of the paper here the technical note. That is the basis of the LC whip. It's not very different to the one you'll see that's attached to the cabinet paper. I thought it was important that you saw kind of the thought process behind why we've got to the plan that we've got to, hence why you are scrutinising us. We have consulted with the public. We did that over the summer, and I was really surprised and pleased with the number of consultees we had. So we had 1,713 visitors to the consultation page that viewed it. Those are unique visitors, so it's not the same person going in twice. And we had 761 contributions. So we presented the plan on a map-based website called Commonplace. And the decision behind that was so that people could see the routes in situ rather than just reading them on a list, and also it allowed the public and ourselves to identify where there's gaps in our infrastructure. And those 761 contributions are where people have either commented on an existing route or designed their own route that we're missing within our plan. We're going through those at the moment. It also allowed people to object to any routes we put in, or just to give general comments of them. We have also got 340 people subscribed for future updates. So we will be updating those continually on the progression of the LC whip, including the priority list that we present and we deliver every year. The main projects that were supported through the consultation were routes from residential areas into the city. So I'm really pleased that that aligns with the infrastructure projects we're currently delivering, with Ayleston Hill and Home at Lacey Road being given external funding to deliver. So that's really good that we're delivering what the public want us to deliver. The next step of the LC whip is to go to Cabinet, gain approval, and then once that's been achieved, part of the Cabinet recommendation is that approval is given to Gemma Dando as Chief Operating Officer and Councillor Price as our portfolio holder to prioritise the list of routes to be delivered that will then go into our operational work next year and going forward. I can go into more detail on the consultation, or I'm just happy to open for questions or give any more detail that you might want. But thank you.
Thank you. Have we been joined by... Okay. I'll kick off, if that's all right, at this stage. It's a question really for Councillor Price, which is, this report was dropped into our lap, shall we say, in scrutiny at relatively short notice. Councillor Price, what's the political imperative for driving this forward at the present time?
Well, there's a straight answer. I'm not sure that there is any political imperative of it, other than it's quite clear from where we're at within local government and national government that if we need and want to move forward with any infrastructure, whatever it is, whether it's for roads, cycling, walking, any infrastructure, whatever it is, we have to have the basis of a plan to draw down the evidence to support any applications or bids we make. And the government they've said in no uncertain terms that without these plans, you're not likely to succeed in any bids for grant funding. So here we're halfway through this current administration, and it's necessary to get these things done and get them to a point where when bids do become available, if they are to come forward, we're in a place that we can track down the funding for the things that we're trying to do.
Thank you. That's kind of what I was slightly concerned about in that we are putting together, we've put time, effort, resources into an LC whip because there is an awareness that if the council wants to unlock funding in other areas potentially, this has to exist and be on our, have been accepted by the council as a living, breathing document. Would that be fair to say?
Well, it's part and parcel of anything to do with grant funding. So we're in the middle of a very large programme of infrastructure for walking and cycling, as Fionn said, with regarding Ailson Hill, Home Lacey Road, quiet routes to schools, all of those are funded from government pots. And if they're saying that if you want to continue with the investment on any of those sorts of schemes, that you have to do these things, then it's necessary not just to do them for the funding, but to do them to make sure that we're actually communicating the wishes of the county into a scheme that then has the ability to be funded. Otherwise, you're just chasing yourself for no advantage whatever.
I understand that, but we've brought this document to the table. It has lots of great ideas in it. There's lots of fabulous ideas, but there's no implementation strategy attached to it. And I am just concerned that we're going to be spending a considerable amount of time talking about a document that, in all reality, stands very little chance of seeing any real progress of being implemented in the short to medium term.
Well, you have to start somewhere. And you can't implement anything until you've got a basis for what it is you're trying to implement. And, first off, there's no point in trying to find something if you don't know there's any funding at the end of it. This is not all about funding. It is about designing and getting what the public wants. You consult with the public on what is it they're looking for. Every document that comes out of this council and government at the present moment, it refers to the health benefits of walking and cycling. So we have got to be in a place that we evidence that benefits and how that will be done. Now, the schemes that come out of this, well, as Fionn said, we are able to communicate with those people that have been consulted to or consulted with, and therefore we will get their feedback as and when these things come forward. But we are delivering a lot of schemes this year, and there will be, the one thing that I see in the results of this is that there's still a lot of people that are over here, over there. They all have, and we all have, because most of us are car drivers. The car drivers have always had a majority of people not particularly interested in cycling and walking per se, and it becomes an issue of, well, I'm going to be a car driver, I'm going to be a public transport user, I'm going to go on the train, there's not enough buses, I want to walk if I could. At the end of the day, we are a growing population. The population has its own issues, and we have to meet how we move around the county. So the implementation of schemes starts with basically having this report done, consulted on, get the ideas. You're going to scrutinise it today. It'll go to Cabinet. It will have a debate about the direction of travel. So to answer your question, it is multifaceted in all ways as to where it starts and where it finishes. And it's not finishing just because of this report. It's going to continue on.
Thank you for your answer. Yeah, I think you wanted to come back in on that, Fionn. Yeah.
Yeah, just to say that, so it's clear that the LC Whip is a non-political document. It's going to last over multiple administrations. But as an officer, when I make decisions, I need to make sure that I'm putting the money in the right place. So we recently got allocated our 4-year allocation for the local transport grant. It's the first time we've been given a multi-year allocation, so it's allowed us to plan, which has been really great. That's capital, and we've just been this week got the revenue allocation. So this month we are prioritising that list of spend for the next 12, for next financial year and potentially the next 4 financial years. So when I I present to the required officer to say, are you happy with this allocation? I need to make sure that it's in the right place. So as an officer, I don't want to spend the money in the wrong places. So speaking to the public and getting their plan and their view of the plan in place allows me to allocate that money in the best way. So for example, in the consultation, the 5 most popular improvements that the public were asking for, and this is priority down: quiet lanes, highway route upgrades, junction safety upgrades, traffic calming and footway improvements. So I know when I'm looking through the priority list and allocating where should the money go, I know those are the 5 most important things to the people in Herefordshire, so I'm unlikely to ignore those. So that's, I think, the reason why the LCWIP coming in this year is such a priority, because we're in a one-off opportunity with 4-year funding allocation from government to be able to actually deliver some really good projects and design and build over multiple years. So we're not rushing. We can get good value for money, and we can also engage with the public to make sure they're happy with the projects we've picked.
That's really helpful. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. I saw Gemma had her hand up. Did you want to come in, Gemma?
I was going to say something along the same lines as Fion, actually. I think what I'd add to what Fion said is we need to have so we already get active travel funding as well as a council. We don't get very much at the moment, but with a LC whip in place, we're hoping to improve our ranking or our grading in active travel and therefore get more money in as well. So that would be a separate grant fund, and it's directly related to having an LC whip in place. So not only will it help us allocate the money that we've already got through the local transport grant and the small amount of active travel funding, but it'll also help us get more active travel funding into the council and, like we said, make these improvements that we've consulted on. So from an officer perspective, that was our keenness to get it through nice and quickly, so that with this money coming in we can allocate it properly.
That's very helpful. Rhiannon, have you joined us? Have you? Is Rhiannon with us? Yeah.
Yes,
Can you?
hello, I'm here.
Hi, Rhiannon. I just wanted. I'd like to get your take on the plan very soon. I just wanted to address one question which was a question from a member of the public that I did say I would address, which is something that came up in our lines of inquiry as well, which is the fact that we don't have an implementation strategy attached to the LC whip. In your experience of other LC whips, would it be good practice for us to have had an implementation strategy at this stage?
Yeah, it's helpful to have an implementation strategy, or at least a kind of a detailed prioritization of your pipeline. And the reason for this is what Gemma just alluded to. So we're currently going through our capability assessment, and having an adopted LC whip is really good evidence for increasing your network development plans, which is one of the 3 kind of pillars of the capability assessment. So I'll briefly go into that. So the capability assessment is calculated based on 3 things. So leadership, your network plans, and your delivery. So the LC whip and having the implementation plan or pipeline that's been agreed is really helpful of evidence for your network planning. And that can also improve your overall score. So it's helpful to have an LC whip and also to have detailed plans about how you propose to implement it, how you propose to fund it. So yeah, it's all helpful to increase your rating, and then also to ensure that the council deliver on plans that they commit to in meetings such as this.
For all our viewers at home, would you just explain how the rating works, please?
Yes, so all authorities in England are rated based on a scale from 0 to 4. So Herefordshire's current rating is level 1. And we look at 3 things in the assessment. So 1 is leadership, what your policies look like. Do you have members who are pro active travel? Number 2 is leadership plans, so commitments to LC whips, funding of pipelines. And then number 3 is delivery. So what have you built with ATF money and also other grants that you may have access to? So LUF is a funding stream I know that Herefordshire have had as well in the past. So it's kind of 3 things there. So 1 is, kind of plan your leadership support. 2 is plans, and then 3 is what you've built. That they're the kind of three pillars of what we assess local authorities on. And that's important because it's linked to the amount of funding that you get as well.
Thank you. Gemma, did you want to come back on that by the look of it?
I was actually going to come back on the implementation strategy and the prioritisation, if that's okay, Councillor.
Yes, please. Thank you.
We're currently working on that. It's not attached to the documents that's going to be adopted by Cabinet and full council. But what we can commit to doing is make sure that it's uploaded on our website when it's finished, but we'd also be happy to come back to Scrutiny at a future meeting and bring it alongside, so that we can, it'll be in the public domain in a different way, so it'll be on the website and it can also be part of the Scrutiny papers, and we'd be happy to discuss it again in this setting, if that's acceptable to Scrutiny.
I'm seeing nods around the table, Gemma. Do you have a timeline in your head? Is that something you've been discussing?
Yeah, so it's Fee and the team are working on it now, so we're hoping it'll be finished this side of Christmas, so we'd be happy to come back quite quickly with it to share it.
Now, is this an implementation strategy or a pipeline, and could you just explain the difference between the two, please?
Okay, I'm going to pass this one to Fee, if that's okay.
So
Are you going to take it out, Fee?
So they're two separate things, but both will be able to be presented to Scrutiny. So the prioritisation list will provide all the routes that we've identified and consulted on within Herefordshire, and where in the priority all of those are, and there's hundreds of them. The implementation list will be a short-term plan of what we're designing and building based on the current funding or assumed funding we're going to get over the next couple of years. So there'll be the list of this is what we want to do, and this is what the public think are the priorities, and then there'll be this is what we're actually delivering. So both will be available to you to see, but I would consider them both separate documents.
That's interesting. Obviously, there's only 6 months between now and then. Was there a pressing reason why this came forward without the implementation strategy in the pipeline now, rather than waiting till everything was ready?
We wanted the plan in place because we wanted the theory behind our decision making and why we wanted certain routes over others. The plan is never going to stop being developed, so the priority list is always going to be updated. So we're looking at a multi-month, every multiple times a year we will update that list. So there was no particular reason why one was included or the other than just the way time worked, and we wanted to focus on getting the theory behind our LC whip perfect, and then the plan would follow from that.
Rhiannon, is that standard practice?
It varies. We don't have any strict rules about that, so the way Fionn outlined that makes sense. It's kind of up to you how you proceed with it, but it's good to see that you've got plans, and particularly that Fionn talked about the implementation plan, that those are funded, and it's good to see that you've got an understanding of your programme and what you want to work on in active travel.
That's really helpful. Okay, Councillor Baker, then Councillor Cornthwaite. Councillor Toynbee.
Thank you, Chair. This is a lengthy report, to put it mildly. And the bee that I have in my bonnet, as you probably know, Fionn, is greenways. So I searched and searched through this report, trying to find any mention of it. Eventually, I found it on page 304 in Appendix 3. But it doesn't mention anything about landowners or property owners or anything like that. In fact, it's a very vague page of comments. Now, we did mention this, well, I mentioned this at the last meeting we had regarding it was the local transport plan, in fact, we were talking about. But I was expecting something on this in here because it relates to walking and cycling and everything else. But there's really nothing there that would give me or my residents, and I have a number of residents on my ward, in fact, who own property, old railway stations, and land along the old route, the railway route that went from Bromyard to Leominster. Now, if you're going to be talking about greenways and the implementation possibly of greenways across the county, there's got to be mention of people who own the land where these greenways are going to run. Otherwise, it's going to create all sorts of problems. Now, all the landowners and property owners within my area have all written to me, and I've said that I would be having a meeting here today, and that I would get back to them with some information about what's going on and where they stand as property owners with regard to the council using their land to run these greenways. And some of the plans, they were mostly verbal, but some of the plans that the so-called organisers of these greenways have come up with have basically identified properties. One of them is an extremely nice restoration of a railway station, which is now a private house, and within the buildings and railway carriages there are Airbnbs. But and so it's really important that we include these people, because I say when these projects were mooted, someone went along there, pointed out this railway station, this private house, and said, "Oh, well, we could use these buildings here as toilets, and this building here we could make a cafe," and so it went on, and there was no reference at all to the owners of these places. Now, how would you feel if someone stood outside your house and said, "Well, we'll put a little footpath down here, and we'll use your house as a toilet"? How about that? I mean, it's just not possible, and it's not right, and we should never ever consider that. But we did consider it back in 2021. There was some sort of review put in by, I think it was your.
I'm just going to, Councillor Baker, we are getting into ward issues here a little bit rather than scrutiny. I think there's a question here, which is could we ask Fiona just to expand a little bit more on greenways and whether there will be more work going into the plan. But I don't want to get into specifics around the ward. I think that's too specific to your ward, Bruce. Sorry.
I shouldn't have mentioned the word ward, but the greenway runs through it.
We've got that. Let's see what.
There's only one other, which is down in.
Yes,
I think we get that.
Yeah, so I do acknowledge that the wording in what we provided, the technical report, isn't very clear. In the actual report that will be going to Cabinet, there will be a lot more wording around greenways and are working with landowners to ensure, they are respected as well, because greenways have their part in the infrastructure plan, but landowners also have their responsibility. The couple that you did mention in the railway station, they did come and visit me at one of the in-person events, and yes, you did. Thank you for that. They were lovely. I'm very excited to go and see their property. What I've agreed to do is we have actually sent them the section of the draft LC whip that references greenways and landowners. We've asked them to give us their comment because they did consult on the document and they were very, very detailed in their consultation. So the report, when it will go to Cabinet, will have wording in it that landowners have approved or have said they're not objecting to. So I'm happy to send that word in to you before Cabinet so you can see what we've proposed to put instead in there.
Thank you, Fiona.
Just that reading through this huge report, I didn't see anything mention landowners. Now you said the word just now, but I couldn't find it. So could you point me in the right direction? Do it outside the meeting.
So the document you've got is the technical report, and the actual plan itself will have details of landowners and their responsibilities, but also their rights as well within it. Greenways are one of those things that we will support, but as a council, they're not our focus at the moment because we're looking at focusing on infrastructure within our network. So we will work with community groups and landowners as they wish or don't wish to open up greenways. But the main focus of our LC whip is looking at what's within our control. So you note we don't put a huge amount of priority on work on the A49 because that's not our network, that's National Highways' network. While we do work with them and advocate for routes, it's not something that we can prioritise or put in our delivery plan because it's not our network. So that's why it's not as detailed as, say, a route that's entirely on our land.
I think there'll be more information coming that you can provide Councillor Councillor Baker with in the not too distant future.
I'll answer to anything, but just a quick question. If landowners were consulted and didn't want to do it, would you then consider compulsory purchase?
There is nothing within our delivery plan that has any requirement for compulsory purchase. We need to be mindful of the funding that we get and spend it appropriately. And compulsory purchase is a very expensive and a very time-consuming thing to do, which is why I understand when we're doing large infrastructure projects like a bypass. But there is so many projects on the LC whip that we could deliver. It would be very, very unlikely that we would get to the bottom of a list where there might be need for compulsory purchase, and there would just not be the funding available for us to do that. So I'm not going to say never, but I'm going to say it's very, very unlikely that that would ever be something we do.
I think we get that point. Okay, Councillor Toynbee, then Councillor Cornthwaite.
Yeah, thanks very much. Firstly, it's just very disappointing that we're yet again not a full complement of councillors, and that our missing colleague has not sent apologies or a substitute, so we haven't got the balance that we ought to have. So, as I say, that is disappointing. Thanks very much for the report. It's really useful, and those three introductions from Fionn, Gemma and Rhiannon were really helpful as well, and actually answered some of the questions that I had, especially about implementation. So yeah, that's very helpful. In a way, it's quite difficult to scrutinise because it's sort of a wish list, and it's sort of aspiration, but wish lists and aspirations are very good. And, you know, we could make political points about having to chase ratings and be pitted against other councillors and, you know, putting an awful lot of officer work into something when we could just get decent funding in the first place and make our own decisions instead of being micromanaged from central government. But this has encouraged me, what we've heard so far encouraged me that this is a useful document anyway. It's encouraging to hear from Councillor Price that this isn't all just about bidding for funding, and that these priorities will be, I hope, things that we will do anyway, even if we don't get funding. So that, for us, for me, that's a really key question. You know, when we've done the prioritising, what are the things that we're planning to do anyway, whether or not we get funding? I'm just going to go through a few things. As I say, a lot of the language in the report. Oh, by the way, the appendices, the detail was really useful, but as I always requested, it would be really great if we could have the title of appendices when they're in attachments, because, you know, I'm sort of going back and, was that 2 or 3 that had the technical? No. So another plea for that, thank you. Yeah, so a lot of reading the report, a lot of the questions that, you know, jumped out for me was sort of, yes, this will deliver this and it will support this and it will enable this, but only if it happens. So there are things that, you know, from the pedantic point of view, we can't claim that this plan or strategy actually does, because it'll only do if we implement it. But I'm glad that that's been a focus of today and that we're all aware of that. So that covers quite a lot of what I was going to say. On paragraph 18 with the equality duty, I'm a bit surprised to say that the potential impact of this project is low. Is that simply because it's just a list of aspirations and, you know, nothing's going to have an impact until we actually do anything? I assume that that's why the impact is judged to be low?
Yeah, so as it's just a priority list and a technical report provided, it is low. In the cabinet paper, we actually present the finalised plan. The equality rating is very different, and there's a lot more wording in as to what it can do to improve the equality.
Great, yeah, thanks. Because obviously, if we could wave a magic wand and do all these things, it'd be a huge impact, wouldn't it, from the equality point of view? Yes, again, you know, paragraph 22, the council's own local transport plan commits us to maintaining, improving, extending and prioritising the active travel network in Herefordshire, you know, whether or not we adopt this. So we will be keeping a close eye on what is adopted and what isn't, and that the public, you know, trying to keep residents engaged in the prioritisation process. On paragraph 23 about consultation, I really understand that it was helpful having all those maps, and so I can see why we used Commonplace. I expect a lot of us receive feedback from residents saying, how the hell do I do this thing? Please help me. I've commented on this, the pathway. I don't understand what the pathway is. I don't understand what the client journey is. I don't know if I've put an answer to this, and I know it is inherently complex, but I just want to put down a marker for us, receiving the feedback on the actual process and getting any learning out of that we can. And yes, in terms of what's coming to Cabinet, we've got it coming to political group consultation, haven't we, the day after tomorrow? So there may be more. I'm looking at Councillor Baker. There may be more detail that can be gone into at that. And then there's going to be a lot of work, presumably, between taking on board comments from today, taking on board comments from Thursday, in time for things to come to Cabinet. So it'll be very interesting as well for us to know. Sometimes we get one version and then we get a second version, but it's difficult to see what the changes have been. So it would be really useful to know what changes have been made during this period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toynbee. Councillor Cornthwaite, did you want to come in specific?
Yeah, so I'm one of those who gets his all the things printed off because I've declared that that's what I need to see. I need to see it written down, and I have to say, yeah, 400 pages. So I set myself a little bit of time aside to start reading through it. But when you're reading through it, you notice all the grammar and spelling mistakes. So I'm going to ask you, was this produced by the people or the associates that put the report together, and did they not do a spell check and a grammar check? And has nobody bothered to do that since? I've highlighted loads of pages, and I'm not going through every individual one, just to say there are quite a number of those. The associates say that that they've been round looking at to put it all together. I wanted to come to one under the heading severance, where it reads like this: whilst the meandering rivers across Herefordshire provide valuable resources, they also act as severance for many journeys. Rivers across the county create physical barriers that hinder or impede movement between different parts of the landscape, making desire lines tricky to navigate, particularly due to a lack of bridges which route across the river. But I found myself questioning that. Is that really an accurate statement? Are not the rivers part of the whole journey of the thing? Does it really impede? Have we got a lack of bridges? If we've got a lack of bridges, what are we going to do about the lack of bridges? And it's just left there. That's just a point I wanted to make. But and there was another one under results where it said something about the route is not cohesive for pedestrians as drop curbs and tactile paving are either absent or in disrepair for the majority of the route, posing significant safety risks for pedestrians. And I find myself thinking, surely if we've got a dangerous pavement, we're going to fix that. That is surely a priority before we don't have to think that that's part of the whole thing with the LWIP. Was just a thought. I think the pavements should be fixed and it shouldn't necessarily come into this. Now, because I am sort of a local guy, my next point I really wanted to make, because I found this really frustrating. Ross-on-Wye to Hereford. Why? And it goes Ross-on-Wye to Hereford. And it says the audited route follows Ross Road, which runs adjacent to the River Wye. The route is very lightly trafficked, less than 1,000 motor vehicles per day. Site observations undertaken, so I'm assuming somebody cited this, confirmed the likely traffic nature of Ross Road and also identified the lack of natural surveillance and lighting along the route. Ross Road is nowhere near the River Wye. So then I found myself thinking, well, if they can make that sort of mistake, somebody that's been out there surveying it, surely the associates need pulling up over that statement, because we need to know what road they're actually talking about. I'm thinking they have to be talking about Home Lacey Oblique or Withy Road. And if that is limited to the traffic surveillance of 1,000 motor cars per day, I think that is rather a low estimate. My business was down that road, and I know how busy it is. And when we're faced with 500 new houses going into Lower Bullingham, I think that's going to be a considerable, huge amount of vehicles going on that road. So I'd just like that part of that report to be accurate. And I feel we probably paid these associates quite a lot for producing this document, but I would question that we need a little refund over that inaccurate statement that they made there. Thank you.
I think some clarification of that would be very, very useful. I'm just going to touch on a few other themes I'd like to bring. Did you want to come back on that? Sorry, Fionn.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the map-based document, and I think I see the road they're referencing, but I will go and change that. In regards to...
It's got to be the Hall-Withy Road if it's running along the river.
Does it go past Dinador? Dindor? So I think that's it, but I will double check with it. In regards to Severance and the bridges, that is a fair assessment. I would agree with the consultants on that statement. So with the local LTM 120, which is the guiding principles that we use when we design our walking and cycling routes. Directness is one of the key principles of that. So having a river in the middle of the direct route can sometimes cause us issues, and every bridges are not necessarily in the right place for where we want the cycling and walking to go. So I understand what they mean, and we can always word it slightly differently if we think it's worded in the wrong way. But that's the point, is that to do a full LTN 120 compliance scheme, we want to make sure it's direct and it's easy for people to use. So, and it's the shortest route. And sometimes if we're guiding people along rivers to the next bridge, it's not necessarily the shortest one. I think we need to balance the difference between leisure routes and cycle routes as a replacement of cars. So in some instances, if we're designing a leisure route, it's lovely to have them walking along the river. But if we want it to be a reasonable alternative to a motor vehicle, the directness, the quickness and the ease of use is something we consider. And that's where the challenge with rivers comes in. And then in regards to maintenance, yes, maintenance of all our footpaths falls under our statutory duty, and our maintenance team do that. We need to ensure that we advocate them to prioritise the walking and cycling infrastructure as well as the road infrastructure, while at the same time being reasonable in our understanding that there is a lot of people that use our road infrastructure, and the public's main concern a lot of the time, according to Facebook, is potholes. So we are advocating and constantly asking our maintenance team to allocate money towards the footpath and the walkways, knowing that there's potentially not enough money for them to do everything. So I think that's the point we were trying to make, but we can make it clearer if we need to in the document.
Thanks, Fionn. I just want to touch on my first part of my question was really about the politics behind where we are and why we are where we are. I just want to drill into a little bit into the plan now with a couple of questions. Firstly, do you think the plan's going to make it easier and safer for people to walk or cycle to school, the GP and the hospital in Hereford and our market towns? Or is it mainly about long distance and leisure routes? Secondly, will small but important changes, I'm talking about the quick wins and the big projects, will the small but important changes, i.e. removing barriers, adding crossings, fixing pavements, are those going to be delivered quickly while the bigger projects are being planned? So are we going to go for those quick wins? And thirdly, how are we going to monitor this? What targets are going to be set? Are we going to be looking for more children walking to school, fewer accidents, more cycling in our towns? And how often is the plan going to be updated so the public can see progress against these targets?
So I'll go backwards. The plan will be updated on a regular basis. We're proposing probably every 6 months we'll update the plan. That will give the communities an opportunity at a regular period of time to identify priorities for them and identify missing routes, so that we can continually have a delivery plan that is is relevant and it isn't out of date, because they do come out of date very quickly.
Has that been agreed?
It has been agreed internally, and it's something the Council Price has asked us to do as portfolio holder. So, it
So
will
a
come
6-month review, regular updates every 6 months?
every update. How we're delivering that is probably through a website or and some regular comms to our parish and town councils. So yes, I believe. So with the KPIs, we have KPIs in the LTP, the local transport plan, that focus on active travel. That is going to Cabinet and full council at the end, towards the end of this calendar year. We can make sure that there's appropriate KPIs in there for walking and cycling to ensure that anything that the Scrutiny Committee recommend, we could add those in. I'm happy to do that. The LC
That'd be a good recommendation from this
I think it'd
committee.
be a very good recommendation.
Can we make a note of that, please? Thank you.
And then in regards to small delivery versus large delivery, with the funding we've got available, smaller infrastructure, you know, £500,000 down is much more easier for us to put in because we have funding available to us for those. So I think we will be doing a lot of small deliveries, particularly around schools and particularly around ability for people to change a short car journey into a cycle or walking journey. So those will be our main priorities and main areas of focus over the first couple of years. The larger infrastructure projects like your Home Lacey and like your Ailton Hill, they take a number of years to come, and it does require external funding. So there's going to be a lot. Those aren't going to be as numerous. So you'll probably get a few of those every couple of years, whereas crossings or raised tables, drop curbs, 20-mile-an-hour routes, things like that, segregated cycle routes, they're going to be much more plentiful because they're within our control and they're within the budget that we're given from national government to be able to, you know, make decisions on what we think should be spent. So I think that's answered the questions.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very much welcome the talk about the implementation plan and the prioritisation, and I think we should confirm that as one of our recommendations, that we look forward to that. So to make sure that I know it isn't going to slip through the net, but I think that's important to do that. I think also is to put it into context. I mean, when you look at the uptake of the barrel bikes around here, it just proves that, you know, from the good position that we start from, and I think we should. You know, with all sorts of things like this, we sort of go into, and rightly so, go into the slightly things that need to be reevaluated or slightly negative. But we need to recognise the positive aspects of this as well and where we're starting from. I think safety is the key issue, particularly on cycling, and some of those things, sending children to school on bikes. It has been done for many, many years, but we do live in very different times, and that's not just all to do with road safety, and I think we have to be mindful of those changes as well. But also the importance, of course, that whilst we're looking at specific routes here, nonetheless, most cycling is still done on our main highways, and so therefore highway maintenance and potholes, because whilst you may go across a pothole in a vehicle, if you go across one in a cycle, it's an entirely different matter, and you can come off it. And I know that the cyclists in my ward that talk to me about it, you know, say, well, it's lethal. Have you seen that particular thing? And it's very, very serious. And that links me to my second point, which is really funding. And I will make a broader point, which is, of course, as the fairer funding review takes place, which will be anything but fair to this council, you know, that the impact that has on our resources to put in those maintenance, both on the existing highways and extending on that, I think will be a big issue. It always annoyed me that when DEFRA reformed their rural subsidies, that they didn't make more of their ability to persuade landowners to create these loops, so that we had cycling loops, we had walking loops, so that people, particularly in my villages, but on the edge of towns, could have a 10-minute walk, a 20-minute walk that was a loop that they could go round and help with that. And I just think that was an option that was missed. In particular, there was mention of rivers, which also got me going, which was, we also, of course, have to maintain some of the footbridges that we've got, and one of those is in my ward at the moment, on a very popular footbridge. I appreciate that we're in the interventions for smaller settlements with increasing ambition, which I put as anything outside a market town. But there is a great deal that could be done here, and of course, particularly with the aspects of tourism, as well as those local population. And I don't think we should miss those opportunities to put that in there as well.
I know the driver for this is about modal shift, but this is about encouraging people to use these to cycle and walk as well. And so those rural areas have great potential. I know around Keenton we have a walking festival. They work with Titley, and we've been replacing kissing gates and all the rest of it. Again, being done with council support. Now we can do that support, but then of course we lost our rural services delivery grant, which is what we were using that money for. And my guess is we ain't going to have that sort of capacity. And I do think we need to put this document in the context of that as well, because we are spending a lot, particularly on walking, which complements this work greatly. But we may not have the capacity in future because of the way government continues to strangle our finances, and I just think that context needs to be put there. And what we'll be reliant, of course, is government giving us specific money, grants for this specific work, because it ain't going to come out of the general pot, because we know all that's going to go. That's going to go on the essential services. Thanks.
Was there a question, Councillor Phillips?
I'm sure there was one there somewhere. But I feel a lot better.
So I agree with the safety around the routes, and LTM 120, I refer to it again, safety is a priority of that plan. So it is something that we need to ensure that all of our routes are safe. So that's key, and all of our designs should have a safety audit and things like that. So that will be covered. In regards to school children, I think it's a really good point, and one of the things that Active Travel England work with us really closely on is how we get that modal shift from a young age. So if we work with children and walking and cycling and being mobile is part of their day-to-day, it becomes more of a habit in the future. So if you look at places like Holland, for example, they focused on the younger generation, number of generations ago, and now it's habit that all adults walk and cycle. So that's something we're focused on. We do get grants through things like bikeability, where we do training. We're one of the best in the country for our bikeability uptake with our schools, so that's really positive. 98% of those eligible get the training. But there's more to do. There's an 11% there we could grab. And I think we need to be mindful in when we deliver, there's the infrastructure we're delivering, which is what the LC WIP is going to focus on. But also there's the softer measures, like the barrel bikes, which are really well, I think it's like 30,000 kilometres were cycled in July or something. It was a huge number. It's absolutely incredible, the uptake on the barrel bikes. And again, we're looking at prioritising additional funding for that programme, and also there's other things we can do with it. So, for example, we could do travel plans for schools. It's something that Chairman and Councillor Price have been supporting me on. We're getting somebody in next week who's going to start updating our travel plan process. So it's going to be much more focused on individual needs for individual schools. And there's a school in Ledbury who've offered to be our first pilot. I'm really excited about that. So we can do a lot more with the communities, and that's where we need to be ensuring that we do advocate for additional funding. So it's not just the capital that we get to build infrastructure, it's also the revenue to do the smaller things like the Nordic walk-in that Richard Vaughan's team deliver. Get booked up within a couple of hours. So those kind of things, we know the public want them. We know we're providing a service to the community that they value. Therefore, those things we need to get to continue. And with smaller areas, I don't want to make the plan is just looking at the city, because the city has a lot of routes in there, but also some of the other areas. And I'm happy to come to Kington and look at what we can do actually to look at delivery in there. We're speaking to our education colleagues and our vulnerable youth colleagues about what we could do with walking and cycling to support those in Kington. So it'd be great to chat to you about that, and also looking at trials we could do in certain areas. So if there's a particular scheme you want to do, maybe we can trial in your area.
Thank you. I was actually going to touch on that, because I was going to say a lot of the. I think it's important that we make sure that the LC WIP has a fair share for our market towns as well as Hereford. And I did notice that a lot of the schemes seem to be focused on Hereford, and how will the surrounding area, how will our market towns be guaranteed real investment and not just get what any money's left at the end? I think if you could address that, please.
Yeah, so with the local transport grant that's been allocated to us for the next 4 years, there is a portion of that that's going to be dedicated to the rural areas, so outside of the city. That will be over the next couple of months when the priority list of that funding is finalised. That will be able to be available for you all to see. So we are trying to make sure that there is a fair and reasonable allocation of the funding we get to all our residents, not just those in the larger areas, because ultimately we could make 10% of people change their behaviour in the city. We might have another 10% in Kington or Ledbury or Leominster. Just because there's less within that 10% doesn't mean they don't have a need, and we will work on prioritising
Or a
that.
right.
Or a right, yes, true.
Yeah, I would be interested to know what equation you use and how we calculate that. I don't know, Gemma, is there a way of doing that you're aware of, how that money is going to be allocated?
No, but maybe that's something we could bring back to you. I don't know what the calculation is.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you. I think Councillor Baker wanted to come back in, but just before he does, looking at the survey results, I think it was only 42% of people supported the proposed routes, and nearly a third were actually unhappy. So, how will local suggestions like missing routes or quiet lanes be properly built into the final plan?
So that's what we're currently doing this month, which is why the priority list isn't available today. So we're going through each comment that we've received, and I think there's 700 odd, responses that we've had that we are going through and working out what we've missed. A lot of the people that were unsupportive they wanted more rather than they wanted less, so they didn't support the small intervention that we'd proposed. They wanted a much greater intervention. So we're just trying to understand what that is. I think it's also very difficult when it comes to walking and cycling is that it is a polarising view. And a lot of comments that we received, and we'll get the figures available, were just unsupportive of anything that was prioritising walking and cycling over a vehicle, over a car. And that's a continuous challenge that we have within the area of work, that people want us to focus more on car travel, and there is that, the local transport plan focuses on all travel. This is predominantly just looking at walking and cycling, so it's difficult to take those opinions as an opinion on the route when it's just an opinion of I don't like anything that's walking and cycling. And we could always churn out, but some of the comments are you should never prioritise the cycling over a car. So the figure is quite skewed, and it'd be interesting to come
Thank you.
back.
That helps.
It does good.
Yeah, but it would be interesting to see. Obviously, there will be learning from the results of the consultation, and it will be interesting to see that when that comes out, and that obviously how that feeds into the implementation strategy. Thank you. I've got one more question, and I think was it Councillor Baker you wanted to come back in, but I just before we move on to that, I was just looking at something that came out: safety at junctions. Some of our crossings and junctions sadly fall significantly below national safety standards. When will these be fixed? How are they going to be prioritised? And will every new scheme meet the government's minimum safety rules, LT1/T, please?
LT1/20 is guidance, so it is best endeavours. Active Travel England are creating a rural guidance document, which we've consulted on. So the LT1 rules are quite prohibitive in rural areas. So to put a segregated walking route that's segregated from a cycle route that's contraflow, so two directional, and then enough room for 2 car lanes, we don't have that many wide roads, so it's sometimes impossible for us to be LTM120. And I think one thing we need to do is make sure that we get the right infrastructure, and sometimes that's not always LTM120 compliant. When we're working with developers and they're putting in new infrastructure, we do push them to be LTM120 compliant, and actually Active Travel England are now a statutory consultee on all developments. So any planning application that goes in will go through Active Travel England, so we can ensure that new infrastructure is built that way. For our infrastructure, we would have to do safety audits on anything we put in. So any cycle infrastructure or walking infrastructure will be required to be safe to do with our audit. And there's normally multiple audits that are done before and after and doing design. So we won't be putting in anything that's inherently unsafe, but it may not be fully LTM 120 compliant, and we'll see what happens with the rural guidance.
And sort of existing crossings and junctions that are really unsafe, are we creating like a hierarchy of need?
Yes, we are, and that's where we were really grateful with the public for identifying those in the consultation, both for the LTP and the LC whip. So they will form part of our prioritisation list as the ones we look and focus on, and also as we do that 6-monthly call for comments, that allows us to make sure that list is correct.
And will that prioritisation list be included in the implementation strategy, which should be available by Christmas?
It will be.
Thank you. Make a note of that, please. Councillor Baker.
Thank you very much. The report concentrates a lot on developing networks, doesn't it? I just wondered if you have a personal wish list. What's number one? What are we going to see first? Once all this is agreed, where's your first footpath or your first cycle track? Where's it going? For your personal view.
So I don't tend to bring my personal view into work, because the opinion of Ffion is not the opinion of the Transport Services Planning Manager. But looking at what the public have asked for, the biggest supportive is 70% of people supported quiet lanes. So I think that there's a call there within the community to identify where those could be and what we could deliver. My professional recommendation is that we look at anything where there's safety concerns or anything where we can improve, particularly safety for the vulnerable people in our community. So we have children, we have elderly people, people with disabilities. We have a college for the blind here. What infrastructure have we got there that is reasonable and appropriate for those people in our community? So if it was my wish list, it would be the public have asked for quiet lanes, we'd look at those, but then also children and vulnerable people.
Apologies for putting you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I've had worse.
I just wanted to just come back just again. I touched on it earlier, but monitoring again. How are we going to measure the success of this plan? What are the real things we're going to put in place that you can say to me, since we adopted this LC whip, we have managed to reduce emissions, or we've managed to reduce accidents by this much, and we know this because?
So as a council, we have a really good monitoring network. So we have transport monitors all around the county. Every market town has one. They're a mixture of 2 different companies, and they monitor walking, cycling, car usage. They don't monitor emissions, but we do work with our colleagues in that team to look at where we can put emission monitoring in. And that's what we need to do. So we have data of current cycling, and what we need to do is when we put a scheme in, make sure that we then check and make sure that that's increased it. And that's sometimes one of the requirements of the grants we ask for, is there has to be a percentage uplift in walking and cycling. Anywhere where there's safety, obviously, we would make sure that we work with the police to identify what was the safety issue, and if it was our infrastructure, we would put that in. And the success of that is that we've delivered a scheme the police say is safe, and the reason for that accident would not be repeated. So that monitoring network is what we've got. We are looking at using it specifically to monitor things like LTP, and that gives us a really good indication of the uplift in cycling and walking from particular communities.
That's great. Will the implementation plan have smart targets alongside it?
We could add smart targets alongside it. That would be something you may want to recommend, and we would put in.
We'll talk about that. That's great. Thank you. So, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. It's very, very interesting. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and learnt an awful lot. Now, with safety, what I've gathered repeatedly since being a councillor is, yes, we refer to the police for accident hotspots or accidents or such, but an awful lot of accidents are not reported to the police. And I'm not saying that they should be, I'm purely stating a fact. And therefore, the police don't have the full picture. And it's I've been at meetings, one in particular one, where to do with planning and safety and and highways and such, and it was very difficult because people just don't report it. So, which is a shame. I'll just make that point. Thank you.
And that's a really good point. So our monitors, our transport monitors, we're upgrading them slowly from, some of them are, over 10 years old, to more modern ones that use AI. And the AI software does record near misses and actual collisions. So we do get that data that's not reported to the police. So it comes up on our dashboard so we can review what happened, whether it was an issue with our infrastructure, whether it was just bad behaviour. So we use the police data because that's really important for us to understand that, but also we do proactively look for those near misses and collisions on our network with those monitors.
That's very reassuring. Thank you.
I think this has been a very useful session. Do we have any more questions, councillors? Then what I'm going to suggest is that we stop the live feed briefly while we discuss our recommendations, and then we'll start it again and we'll share them with the public. So we'll take a comfort break. Can I say we'll stop for 10 minutes while we sort this out, and we'll start again at 3:15. Thank you. If we could stop the live. Thank you. Yes, indeed, bless you. Well, we've taken some time and we have come up with some recommendations, and if I could ask the monitoring officer to read the recommendations, please.
Regrettably, the monitoring
Not the
officer,
monitoring officer.
isn't able to attend today.
I have promoted you again. I do make a habit of doing that.
Several times over.
The statutory scrutiny officer, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations regarding the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan decided by the Connected Communities Scrutiny Committee today on the 9th of September are as follows. 1. Ensure that the performance indicators monitoring the success of the local transport plan include indicators showing reduced collisions, reduced emissions and greater take-up of walking and cycling as a mode of transport. 2. Ensure that any targets in the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan are specific, measurable, agreed or achievable, realistic and time-bound. And 3. Publish the local cycling and walking infrastructure strategy, implementation plan, prioritisation list and programme of work by the end of 2025. Sorry, I've just noticed here actually there's a slight error on the third recommendation. Can I just change the word strategy to plan?
Indeed.
Okay, fine. I'm not going to read those out a second time if that's okay.
That's fine. Thank you, Daniel. I'm happy to propose this. Do I have a seconder for these? Councillor Cornthwaite. Committee, all those in favour of these recommendations? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So I think this. So the covering report, the Connected Communities Scrutiny Committee have reviewed the draft LC Whip and provided feedback, and we've now endorsed this LC Whip with our recommendations to go forward to Cabinet. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the terms of reference for the Housing Development Task and Finish Group. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at this, but the purpose of this item is to agree the terms of reference for Task and Finish Group, to look at good practice and public involvement in housing development and planning, including examples from other local authorities, to understand the points of a housing development when people in Herefordshire can and should be involved in housing development, via the local plan and its ancillary planning documents and statements, via the LTP, via the planning and application process, and to scrutinise current practice and explore opportunities to apply learning from other local authorities to Herefordshire. And I'd like to ask Daniel Webb, Statutory Scrutiny Officer, to introduce this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Following the review of scrutiny earlier this year, all of the committees were invited to submit ideas for task and finish groups as part of our commitment to different ways of working. The chairs and the committees have come up with some really interesting topics, if I might say, and some genuinely useful pieces of work, and it's really encouraging to see scrutiny engaging in different ways, not just holding the local authority to account, but making a real effort to contribute to the policy development process of the council. As you all know as committee members, housing and housing development is one of the most vexed issues that you come across in your day-to-day work. It's one of those issues that creates real passions in the community, good and bad. And the chair has put this idea that if, as we move forward, that we do have housing growth in Herefordshire, how do we make sure that that's delivered smoothly and effectively, that we include people within that process, but at the same time that we use that process effectively, so that it doesn't just become a blockage to any sort of development, or it becomes a source of conflict between the council and residents. As it turns out, there's a significant body of academic work on this, and as such, I think, and clearly, it's a topic that occupies every local authority. So I think there's plenty of theory behind there, and there is plenty of good practice, and the chair has suggested that we could take a look at some of this work and make suggestions with officers about how we can support housing development going forward. So the task and finish group here is in front of you. The idea would be that we would set up a small group of between 5 and 7 members of the council, excluding those who sit on cabinet. That it would be open to everyone, not necessarily the committee members here, though of course you're obviously more than welcome to express an interest in joining it. And having agreed this, I will place this terms of reference out for expressions of interest, and we'll start work on building a programme of work to deliver its objectives.
And the idea would be that we present a report. When would that be, Daniel?
Probably towards May next year.
Yeah, so it would be a piece of work that would take place over the next sort of 9 months. Councillor Baker.
Thank you. There doesn't seem to be anything in here regarding the numbers imposed upon us by the government. 27,260 new houses required in the county between now and 2041. And also the difficulty of building any houses in the north of the county because of the restrictions regarding habitat regulations imposed upon us by Natural England, a quango which we didn't ask for but we've got. So it's becoming extremely difficult to build in the north, which means, and I think possibly something along those lines should be in this report.
I think, Councillor Baker, the reason this task and finish group has come about is because of that. It's implicit in the very existence of this task and finish group. It's responding to the situation we find ourselves in, whereby the county is going to be going through tremendous change, as are so many communities across the country, because of these mandatory housing targets. And it's how we as a county and how we as a council can learn from other areas on how we go on that journey together with our residents, rather than imposing it on our residents top down. What can we do? What interventions can we make? How can we make this as painless and as positive as possible? And I mean, I learned a new word today talking to Daniel. I've heard of NIMBYs, not in my backyard. I hadn't heard of YIMBYs, which is yes in my backyard before. So yes, it's finding and I think this work will explore lots of areas. It will explore negative developments, lessons we can learn from how it's been done wrong, and it will also explore where it's been done correctly, and hopefully we can then create a report that will be useful to this council and those that come after as a tool for trying to take our community with us on this journey that we know is necessary. We know we need more housing, but the way it has been imposed isn't something any of us were expecting. And how we move forward together positively, I think, is a piece of work we could hopefully do that will be a benefit to our residents. Councillor Phillips.
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty important workload that we're going to have to do, because to me, there's also something we've got to incorporate, and that is where we are on the neighbourhood plans as well. And there needs to be a steer there. I'm getting constantly this slight pushback by our officers saying it's too early to do neighbourhood plans. Well, they've just called for sites. They'll be analysing those sites. They'll be declaring whether they're fit before the neighbourhood plan has even sat down to sit. So effectively, in my part of the world, you'll have your sites confirmed by our department before the neighbourhood plans evolved. The other thing is, and the chair knows this, I don't want us to lose those affordable housings and what the local government pension scheme can do. It's doing very good things in other parts of the country, Cornwall in particular. They're using local government money for infrastructure, which the government wants, not in their harebrained schemes. But, there's an awful lot, and like as Bruce has brought up, but it will encapsulate it. But I think we need to be quite focused on what we're doing, because it will be a very, very useful document.
I think it will be a useful document, and Councillor Phillips, you'll be aware I've been pushing for an update upon the new housing development company that we're going to be setting up, and how that could work, certainly with tap into that useful resource as far as pensions are concerned, to help move that on. Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you. I was also going to raise that point about NDPs and the relationship between NDPs and the local plan that Councillor Phillips just raised. So I think that maybe we could make that a little bit more explicit. But yeah, I really strongly support the emphasis on community engagement. It might even be a model for other issues if this goes as we hope it will. and also learning from other places, because as we often say, we don't want to be reinventing the frigging wheel all the time. And as far as housing...
Is that a technical term?
Sorry. Yes. And as far as housing targets are concerned, as Councillor Baker mentioned, I mean, that, yeah, we don't need to go into the specific numbers in this, do we? Because it's all about the basic principles. And now that Angela Rayner and Jim McMahon have gone, it may be, who knows, it may be that things change a little bit. But, you know, as far as central government policy is concerned, this is a useful sort of element of our role as representing, like you say, not imposing things on residents, but representing residents on their behalf to central government about the impact of decisions made in Westminster on Herefordshire.
Yeah, I'm hoping it can be a compass of sorts. Yeah, Daniel.
I think that was a really, in drafting this, I hadn't thought about neighbourhood plans, so thank you very much for that, and I absolutely agree. This is one of the really important points where this work happens. So I've just added a little aid memoir into the objectives there, if that's okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm happy to move this to a vote to accept these terms of reference. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Phillips, a seconder? Councillor Baker, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Excellent. We will be moving on that in due course. I think the adverts for that will be going out, or the notice of setting it up will be going out today. So do think about, within your own party or outside your own party, who you think might be interested in joining that. If it's you feel it's for you or for somebody else, please let's get our brightest and our best behind this. I'll leave it at that. Right. Moving on to the work programme, I'll hand over to Daniel to just do a brief intro on that.
Thank you very much, Chair. At the moment, the work programme is looking a little bare. We have tourism and destination management delayed to allow officers here to spend more time to produce something that you can scrutinise. So we'll bring this in November. Obviously, we've just had a discussion where we've agreed to carry out a task and finish group. Now, obviously, it might not necessarily be the members of this committee who sit on that task and finish group, but I think it's important that that Henry and I spend some time now to flesh out the terms of reference into a programme of work that we can share with you to begin that. And I think that will help then shape the wider committee programme over the next 9 months or so. So we have some topics here around the master plan, which you've asked to look at on and off repeatedly over the last year or two, and broadband, which you've also asked to look at and never quite got round to it, and of course the UK Share Prosperity Fund. I would suggest that you might... There are two factors at play here. One, who sits on the task and finish group, and therefore what spare capacity this committee might have to do other work. So what I might suggest is rather than try and find things to do in January, March, May, as you normally do, allow ourselves a little time to flesh out that programme of work and then determine what capacity remains for the committee. At the same time, it might be worth thinking what your priorities are over the next 18 months. What is it in the calendar, in the forward plan that we share with you, that this committee absolutely needs to look at as part of the governance process in the 18 months ahead?
Yeah, I think when we agreed to set up the task and finish group, the idea was that would be the key piece of work that will be coming out of this committee over the next 9 months or so, and it wasn't necessarily essential that we'd had to have meetings going on in the background. That was never the intention, and that comes directly from your report. Correct. And I think that's a new way of working, and this was seen as a useful piece of work. So I think we could usefully have a work programme review, possibly towards the tail end of October or something, once the task and finish group has been properly set up and we have a membership and we're moving forward with it.
I think that would be a really good idea, Chair. You have a committee meeting on the 4th of November, so it might be worth having a sense by then of where you want to go. So perhaps mid-October?
Okay, that sounds fine. Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, I was just saying it, and I take on board what's just been said. To me, the issue of broadband is coming up in my part of the world and other parts of the county. We were part of a Clear contract with Gloucestershire, which was trailblazing and had an awful lot of public money. An awful lot of infrastructure was put into our villages and across our highways and all the rest of it. And I have to say that the attitude that I'm getting from those companies that were involved is very disappointing in rural areas. Now, if you live in the city or in the market towns, it's all going quite well. But let me tell you, in my part of the world, people now are having real issues about connecting to broadband, about capacity, and the other thing is the whole mobile network. And we're seeing some real problems with mobile network. They are being downgraded, they're not being maintained, all sorts of stupid excuses like, well, the landowner won't let us cut the trees, which is an absolute nonsense. So I don't know, that there is, to me, there is something there about, we had all this money in this big contract. I appreciate it was government money, but we dealt with it on the GigaClear project. And I don't think it's delivered what we thought it was going to, particularly out in the rural areas, where it was especially, of course, given to in order to get this. And there are businesses and private individuals who are having a real struggle with broadband. So at some stage, I think that would be a good thing to look at as well.
Yeah, that feels like it's taking shape, something around fibre, telecoms, for our, the more rural areas of the county. Let's. Yeah, I think that would be a valuable piece of work for Scrutiny. So let's move that up our work programme as something that we're interested in doing. Do we need to take a vote on what we're doing here now? No. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I think the date of our next meeting at the present time is Tuesday the 4th of November at 2 p.m. I'd like to thank you all for coming along this afternoon. I think it was a very valuable meeting, and it's only just after past, but if we could stop the live feed now.